Greetings. Today I want to share with you some ideas I have about my experiences in test repeatability. I've been involved in software testing and software engineering since the early 1980s. My first commercial release, I like to tell people, was June the 4th, 1982. And we did a ton of testing activities as part of our product development effort. Even though we didn't necessarily always have independent testers, we were always doing testing. It was almost like building applications by building test harnesses around them. It's a fascinating software development experience. And through my career, people have always been wondering, what are the characteristics of a good test? What are the characteristics of a great test? What makes a test great? And an answer I hear often is repeatability. And recently, I've been looking at a lot of tools and tool vendors and open source technologies, and I've got more and more customers that seem to talk about the value and the need and the importance of test repeatability. And so they're putting a huge amount of effort into sort of looking at what is repeatable in tests. And I look and I sort of say, well, why are we testing? Why are we doing our work? What is the purpose of our testing? On time, on quality, on budget. Why? Why are we doing it? And I like to believe that on time, on quality, on budget might be meaningless unless we're on purpose. I advocate, and I've come to learn, that the most valuable tests, the tests that have the most value, are the ones that are purposeful, that help us to learn something that matters about risks that matters on the projects that we're dealing with. So purposeful testing for me is very important. And so much of this notion of sameness in testing is tied towards this idea of regression. Regression is one purpose for some tests sometimes. Maybe it's important, maybe on your project it's dominant, but it's not always the most important reason to test. Sameness may be important for regression because we ask the question, how did the software behave yesterday? How does it behave today? How is it going to behave tomorrow? And maybe we want to look and say, yes, sameness matters. Sameness matters if you care about that. In continuous integration, we want to do some of our testing to make sure the behavior yesterday of some things is consistent with the behavior today and will be consistent with the behavior tomorrow. Sure, why not? That's something that's important to learn about. That's a good reason for testing, but it's not the only reason for testing. And a lot of the projects I work on, I find myself concerned about that. Sameness is sometimes like writing over and over again the same thing over again on the blackboard. Sameness is not necessarily going to help us expose new problems. If everybody's always working on the same platform, if everybody's always running the same tests, we're going to run into a situation where we're not going to be necessarily finding new and important concerns. Instead, we're going to be spending a lot of our energy just building a warm, fuzzy feeling in our tummy, whether it's true or not, that the behavior of the software today is consistent with the behavior of the software the last time we ran it. And this, of course, is repeating things, right, over and over again. It's sort of robotizing things. It's like that shampoo instructions. Hey, lather, rinse, repeat. Lather, rinse, repeat. Lather, rinse, repeat. As needed, forever and for always. Do the same thing over and over again. Sure, it gives you some regression confidence, but what if you're on a project, and that's just my imagination, what if you're on a project and you don't have much time, and the development team or the programmers gave you the code, and you have like a couple of days to test it, or a couple of hours to test it, or a couple of minutes to test it, and as you're going, you're getting squeezed and squeezed. And the amount of time that's given for testing is never increased. You've got a fixed delivery, you've got a sprint, you've got something that has to get out the door quickly. And you basically escape there. You gotta find out. You're getting squeezed, but you have to do it. You have to do the testing within the thing. So repeating the same test over and over again, does that help you when you're being squeezed? Actually, what I've learned is it's much more important to have testing vary and change. Think of your testing more like a mosaic, less like a repeatable series of steps. Sure, lather, rinse, repeat is important. Sure, it's critical that we're able to have regression confidence, but that's not the type of testing. That's not the type of knowledge I'm trying to get when I'm working under pressure. When I'm working under pressure, when I'm working in a situation where I'm trying to learn things, I have discovered that diversity is important. I want actually to get as much diversity and variety as I can. I've learned that if I'm looking at the value of something, repeatability does help me build certain regression confidence for certain stakeholders on certain contexts. But variability trumps repeatability for me. Variability is what helps me find new problems. Variability is what helps me explore things when I'm working under pressure. Repeatability versus variability is not always something testers consider. Be careful. All these tools, all these technologies, all these frameworks don't expose the notion of doing it different every time. They try to tell you, do it the same every time. Well, I suggest right now, stand up and look down and see the world around you and realize that diversity is what's going to guide us. Diversity. Everybody can do it differently. And if you do it differently, if every time you run a test, if every time you try something, you do it differently, you are going to expose more and more interesting bugs. When you run a test, change the way you navigate. Change the way. Use the keyboard, use the mouse, use an API. Do it differently every time. Change the platform. Every time you test, run it on a different platform. Do hundreds and hundreds of platforms a week, but change the platform always. Change the environment it's running on always. Change the conditions that are around the application. Every time you run a test, do it with different conditions, different environments, different things. And change the order of operations. Decide to go this way instead of that way. Do it differently every time. Vary it deliberately. Change the data you're using. Don't always say, I need the same data. I need this repeatability. Do variable data. Try things different over and over again. Try it different. Make sure that you can vary the data. Change something. Now, if every time you do a test, you change something, I can almost guarantee you that you're going to find more bugs. I want to suggest that, in my experience, variability trumps repeatability. I'm always working under pressure. I'm always testing when I have hardly enough time to do what I have to do. I find that if every time I test something, I do something a bit different. I had a different factor, I have a different data, I have a different platform, I have a different condition, I have a different order of operation, I have a different something that I'm able to find more bugs. And not only am I able to find more bugs, but I'm able to find more bugs that really, really matter to my stakeholders. This is very important. I'm not saying that repeatability is evil. Sure, repeatability is great for regression confidence, and some of your tests should be built and constructed that way. But when you're working under pressure, emphasize variability. The more change you have, the more variations you have, which are deliberate and relevant, the better bugs you'll find working under pressure. Cheers.